This is Savio. I've been seeking answers to some of life's most perplexing questions my entire life. In 2014, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, and ever since, I realized my calling existed outside of what I knew to be familiar. This podcast is your home for survivors like myself and those who are searching to find meaning to their why. In Season 2, the show includes a mix of coaching sessions followed immediately by interviews with those from all walks of life who have been successful in the business, marketing, coaching, and financial worlds. The intent is to show the human experience in its rawest form so that others may glean insight. Nothing is rehearsed or has been edited. As a board-certified wellness coach, my job is to ask the deep questions of those trying to make sense of their place in this fractured world. I believe life speaks to us in different ways. Many of us listen but don't know how or where to begin. As someone who has crossed the bridge between life and death, I say simply, begin where you are now and get busy living. If you liked today's episode, I would appreciate it if you could share it and subscribe. Be sure to tag me at The Human Resolve so I can reciprocate in kind. So without further ado, welcome to the Human Resolve podcast. James McGonigle has built several businesses from scratch and prides himself on his Mensa status. An overachiever by nature, he lives by the adage, the first to practice, the last to leave. But he soon discovers that life has other plans, doing the things that will truly matter in the end. Hi, Jim. It's good to see you.
Same here. Good. Thank you for the invitation.
Sure. So what would you like coaching on today?
Self-confidence. To me, that's the core, really, of success, happiness, and what have you. If you're fortunate enough to have that instilled, especially in growing up years, life's a lot easier.
So what I just heard you said is self-confidence. You want to focus on that aspect.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would be a great outcome for today's conversation?
If one of your listeners heeded some questions about that we discuss, and maybe cause them to give some thought to maybe. I'm not here with answers, but I think the best way to help people is to raise questions. I think once a person starts questioning, then you begin to, then they take over control. A person can only change themselves. There's self-confidence is an internal event, not external, and therefore external impact external event does not really impact it, maybe superficially. So it has to come from within. So that to me is that's a key point in this whole topic, really.
Great. So your outcome is really about imparting some knowledge onto someone else based upon our conversation today.
Yeah, where maybe the thing that I've found since I did this free audio book is that there seems that at least one chapter seems to hit home with everybody that has listened. It deals with rejection. It deals with things that everybody deals with. The only difference with all of us is how we handle things. The things are pretty much the same. There's some variations, of course, but the experience in life is pretty much standardized. It's just like I said, it's the variety of responses. And the more positive your response can be. Certainly, I'm a big advocate of people avoiding that, what I would call the victim mentality. And I think that oftentimes goes hand in hand with a lack of self-confidence. But the dangerous part of a victim mentality is that if you continually blame others there is absolutely no incentive to learn from it and get better. So it's kind of like you're going to live life running in place.
You speak of this victim mentality. Has that ever shown up in your life?
Well, I guess the closest I came to it, well, first of all, not really, only because to me, the primary role of parents between the ages of 7 and 12, in my opinion, can be summed up in one word, and that's reinforcement, encouragement, more so. I say 7 and 12 because at 7, most 7-year-olds can pretty much take care of themselves, and 12-year-old because they haven't dealt with the distractions of teenage life, high school, and what have you. And that age spread seems to be the most receptive to guidance from parents. And that to me, there are three. If you'd like, I'll give you what I believe to be the essence of self-confidence. Number one is whether it's easier if a person attains this basis from parents growing up. That's what happened to me. It enables you kind of to start life on second base, and you build on that. Unfortunately, there are many people that find themselves having to do this on their own, kind of like self-motivating. Can still be done, but it is much more difficult. But to me, of the three fundamental elements of self-confidence, number one is people need to have their receivers turned on. By that I mean we learn from what we hear, not from what we say. And knowledge really is power. When you've done your homework and whatever it may be, whether it be researching a project, a person, a situation, doesn't really matter. But when you go into a situation knowing the topic, that's very helpful in building self-confidence. A person needs to be generous. I believe, speaking for myself, the best I've ever felt about myself is when I've reached out to help somebody else. Whether it be monetarily or with time, with effort, with attention. That brings home the point that there are people, shall we say, less fortunate than yourself. So that is a pillar of self-confidence when you can do that, because the less time you're thinking about yourself, believe in my opinion, that's one of the best ways to build self-confidence, because you reach out to others, and it like I said, self-confidence really is liking yourself. And if you don't like yourself, who in the world from the outside can you expect to like you? And the third
Jim,
thing, yes.
No, I was just going to ask you, so when you think of or you feel the sense of self-confidence, does that hit you anywhere in your body?
No. Well, it's really a thought process. An example I give you is a person who lacks self-confidence. They have an idea. We all have ideas. We get excited about the idea we have. But people that lack self-confidence, then this thing creeps in, this thought that, well, it was my idea, so how good can it be? So you talk yourself out of an idea that started out exciting you. Or another example of the same kind of mindset is you have an idea, you're excited about it, and then you start to say, well, wait a minute, if it was this good, why didn't somebody else have it? And the result's the same. You talk yourself out of it. And that, to me, failure, I've never seen things as a failure. When something didn't work out in my life, I looked at it very simply as it wasn't meant to be. If you've given the best shot you can, there's nothing more. And it's okay. I've had things that I thought, were going to work. It didn't. It turned out, when I look back, it meant there was something better coming. But the last thing, and the most important thing, and really the message in my book and all, the key element, not only to self-confidence, but to happiness in life, is a sense of appreciation. If you don't have that, life is just always going to be things that you didn't get, you don't have. You live in that half-empty world. And people that appreciate, it has nothing really to do with how much you have. Some of the most appreciative people I've ever met in my life materially had very little, but they were happy with what they had. To me, that is a person that appreciates, they already well on their way to having a happy and a successful life. And success, as I look at it, is not a monetary event, although it certainly, I think that's the benchmark people have. But it's really about how you feel about yourself. And if you appreciate what you have, you've already answered the question, is how do you feel about yourself? You're happy with yourself. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. So how does appreciation happiness fall into your life?
Well, I realized growing up, having parents that I actually, you take for granted because you don't know anybody. You assume when you're young that everybody's parents are like yours. You have no reference point. And it was later on. It actually happened one night at a basketball game. Believe it or not, I was 16 roughly. I played on an all-black basketball team in West Philadelphia. We were at a championship game at Memorial Hall, and my dad went to every practice. Sat in the stands. One night, this particular championship game was snowing. Not a lot, but after the layup drill, the buzzer goes and the game usually starts within 2 or 3 minutes. I'll never forget, we had a 6'8", 240-pound center named Stanley Singletary. And the ref came over and said, listen, we're going to start the game now. And I'll never forget, he turned to me and said, to the ref, he said, we can't start until Mr. Mack gets here. And I thought to myself, I was confused by that. And all of us, just right then, my dad came in. Anyway, the game went on. We won the game. After the game, I went up to Stanley. I said, Stanley, I don't understand. I said, why would you, I've never even seen you and my dad talk. Why would you, make a stand that we, weren't going to start until Mr. Mack got here? He looked at me and he said, Mr. Mack is the only constant in my life. I got it. I got the message. I never looked at that again. As entitlement. I realized how important, how lucky I was, and tried to remind myself over the years. But that was the single, I would say, most memorable point and I was at 16 realizing that was cool experience, and I'm happy it happened to me early in life and not later on. So timing is cool.
So besides your dad, who else were your role models in this realm of self-confidence?
Well, I can't really pinpoint anyone else because I pretty much through high school, through college and graduate school, I worked, and then I got an outside sales job. I was on my own, and then I started my own business. I pretty much have never had a boss. So, and really, I think the mentor is far more important if you don't get that self-confidence instilled in those early years. Then somebody else needs to step in, a coach, a teacher. I didn't need that, so I wasn't looking for that. That's the only way I can answer that question. I'm sure they were there. There was many people have helped me along the way, but more as friends, as peers, than as mentors, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did your dad exemplify self-confidence?
He loved what he did, and he was very good at it. He was the head machinist at the Bulletin. He just enjoyed what he did. And when he got promoted to foreman, he still got up at 4 a.m. I said, why are you doing that? He said, I like what I'm doing. He liked fixing things. And if you're lucky enough in this world to find something that you like doing, and I think a lot of people sell out to money, to perks, or what have you, when they look back on their life, and I've always felt regret is hell. So the more you enjoy something, the better at it you are. Michael Jordan's a classic example. MVP, first to practice, last to leave. That's it. Never changed his routine. And I think that if you really like something, then it's not a job. You wake up in the morning, and that's what my dad. He woke up and he was good to go. I couldn't live that well. Getting up at 4 to go and fix machines was not on my top 1,000 things to do. But I think everybody's different. But certainly the ability to, regret. I want to just touch on a little bit on that, and that is Steve Jobs. You could arguably make a case that he impacted the Earth's population more than any other single individual. I mean, he changed the way we communicate. His last correspondence on this Earth, his priorities, were not in line. Now, if a person like that had everything on the planet died regretting, I mean, that's a message that for all of us to revisit our priorities. Are we really doing what matters in the end? Obviously, he didn't feel it. He did. I wish that letter had more exposure, because it's certainly coming from someone like him who had achieved everything materially a human being could ever imagine, and it just wasn't enough.
So, Jim, is what you're doing enough right now?
Well, when I left my last company about 15 years ago, I went on a quest to find something to reciprocate for this. I lived the American dream, and my family had enjoyed the fruits of that American dream. And about 12 years ago, by accident, I wound up at Walter Reed Hospital with a friend of mine, who was doing buffets for them twice a year. And anyway, it changed my life, because I met somebody who ran this program. And at that time, I was asked by a friend of mine to do some due diligence on a little company and see if they were a candidate to go public. That was my career, bringing small companies public, and then finding a large company or an exciting technology to merge with, and then the stock reacted accordingly. But anyway, this company that I was asked to look at had this free anonymous discount prescription card, which I'm sure you've gotten them in the mail. Everybody gets them. They've been around 30 years. Anyway, whenever I hear the word free, I figure it's free until I find out what's not free. My area of expertise has been due diligence, because I've only done self-underwritten deals, which means I never used a broker's firm. So you better be very good at due diligence if you're going to pursue that method of bringing a company public. Well, I spent this day at Walter Reed, and 5 minutes outside there, this friend of mine said, "Jimmy, you're never going to be the same after the day." I figure I'm going to see things, bad things, soldiers that are wounded and what have you, and that would never forget that. He was 100% right, but for 100% the opposite reason. I actually never spent a more upbeat, optimistic 8 hours in my life. These people had every reason in the world to complain. They were upbeat. They asked me about what I did. We talked about their families. And I got to meet a gentleman by the name of Peter Anderson, who ran this Malone House. To give you some idea, the Malone House housed the 400 most severely wounded soldiers. The average stay there, Savio, was 2 years. That's it. Anyway, I left there. He gave me a coin. He says, "I think you're going to help the soldiers." And I've never been a believer in rabbit's feet or anything like that. But I've never left. That coin's been with me ever since. And what I did is I took this idea that this company I was looking at for the free anonymous discount prescription card, and I decided that would be a great vehicle to raise money for charity. It never was done before, and I'm not even sure it's ever even since been done. I don't understand why, but we hooked up with the Walter Reed Society, And then later on, because my daughters and my wife and my mother-in-law said, well, why don't we do something for the girls? Then we partnered with the Breast Cancer Research Foundation in Manhattan. And in the last 11 years, with just my daughter and my wife, we have contributed. We've never taken a donation. We've contributed almost $1 million, 600,000 to the soldiers and over 300,000 to breast cancer. And the thing we're proudest of, with this free anonymous card, we have saved people in the pharmacies over $40 million. And the card's free and anonymous. We're proud of that program. And then since in the last couple of years, we've morphed into a kind of a more specific target, and that is Operation Key West. And my two partners there are the two former Surgeon Generals of the Army and the Navy. And we have fully focused on military families that have lost a child to cancer or have a child now that is dealing with cancer. It has been the most rewarding 2 years of my life. Talk about appreciate military couples, military families. I've never sensed any feeling of entitlement, which you find just about every time you leave your house every day. And it's been great. What we found out is it's never been done before, and that blew me away. But having these two former Surgeon Generals, right now we're planning on taking the program nationally. It is amazing how many children of military parents are suffering. And the difference here, and I'll just wind this up on my end at least, with any more, unless you have more questions, is that when a child dies of a military parent, when a civilian family loses a child, which is the worst event in the history of any family's experience, you have the support of family, friends in the area, and your spouse. In a military situation, one spouse is almost always deployed, and the hospital they're staying at is not in their hometown. So they're on their own. And I found that the hospital staff, I work with the Portsmouth Naval Hospital, and I found in talking to parents of children that passed and they're sick, is the hospital staff become the surrogate parents. It's one thing to deal with this with support, but imagine being a mother, the husband being deployed somewhere, having to deal with this. And then when it's over, as the Admiral has stated, and it's on our website, when the child passes, the parents they're abandoned. That's the word he used. And he's a lifetime pediatric oncologist. So we're doing something positive. It's a good thing. And there's no better way to boost one's self-confidence. As I said at the very beginning, if you feel good about yourself, you're well on your way. It's really not about the things that people a lot of times associate with self-confidence, and that is like success. If that was the case, there'd be a lot fewer successful people measured by dollars in therapy, suicidal, on drugs. I mean, obviously, it must be something more than material, or they wouldn't be reaching out to they wouldn't be dealing with these situations that you would normally associate with people that don't have enough to eat or a place to live or what have you. Not the case. Anyway, that's my story.
Yeah. So Jim, on your quest for more self-confidence and feeling enough, what do you think those experiences taught you?
Well, I think the key thing to come away with, if things don't work out as you thought they should, that really, I look at that as an opportunity, because the word experience, really, you get experience not from what you do right. What you do right is a result of your experience. You're not adding to that. What doesn't work out is an opportunity to increase your level of experience, both the quantity and the quality. And I think people need to look at what they consider to be some people failure. It's not a failure, only if it dictates to you the fact that you're a victim, you're not smart enough, you're not whatever. Once you start that routine, you sell yourself on that. That to me, I think, is a key message, is using setbacks constructively instead of destructively.
So, Jim, how can we inch yourself closer to gaining more self-confidence? You mentioned a lot about helping other people and doing for them, and I'm just curious for you, how do we get you closer?
Well, the path I just described to you with this Operation Key West is really like the path on steroids in a way, because there's no time. I mean, when you see when you see somebody hurting, there's no time to wallow in your own mess. Really, there's only so many hours in a day, and if you look at it mathematically, there's 24 hours. The more time you spend in a positive way, the mathematics, you just have less time to spend in a negative way. That's not my opinion. That's simple math. So I mean, to me, it's that there's no magic formula. It's just that everybody has to seek. But I go back to, knowledge is power. Study, be prepared when you engage in a situation, because if you're prepared and it doesn't work out, then you're developing a constructive mindset. Well, why didn't it work out? And don't immediately say it was me. That's got to be avoided. If something doesn't work out, the first thing a person should think of, why? And if it turns out that I wasn't prepared, well, guess what? It was me. But it's a constructive me. It leads me to do something better the next time. Again, I go back to the word experience. And experience is really a string of failures, in a way. And you get better at it. And one day you say, that worked out because I didn't make the same mistake I made three mistakes ago. And there you are.
And so how have you handled the mistakes?
I've never dwelled on them. As I said, to me, it wasn't a failure. It wasn't meant to be. If I brought my A game and my A game wasn't good enough, that's it. That's what people, if you don't bring your A game, then you're leaving yourself open for regret. Because we all really know in our hearts when we did good. We can fool the world, but we know. We know when we know. So if the person knows, so if kidding yourself perhaps is, then you really are, you're kidding a fool then. Instead of just, saying, like I say, look at it objectively. Why didn't they do? One of the things that I think a lot of people would be much more, I did spend my career in mergers and acquisitions, so with a lot of negotiating, one of the first things I always did is, instead of coming to the table with what I wanted, I positioned myself as the person I'm negotiating with. I went into his mindset. I tried to figure out what does he want from me? Why is he here? And that gave me, I did that a lot. And it's like I got better at it. And I know I got better at it because when things went the way I was hoping they were, I was trying to put both pieces together before they even came together. A lot of people are so busy wanting to close a deal or wanting to, well, there's two people. It's like when you hear these people talk about trading a certain ball player for, the other team is not stupid. They're not going to give you, a lot of times, a fan, myself included, would like to trade somebody for somebody a lot better. But I forget there's another team with another agenda, and none of this, Savio, is brain surgery. None of it costs money. It really just about people looking into themselves and determining that they're going to be better. Because if they're being better, it kind of makes everybody around them better. Like in sports, the best players are the ones that make their teammates better. Same thing in life. There's not really so many sports metaphors in life, it's not even funny.
So, Jim, what's more left for you to do right now?
Well, I want to take this program that we're on nationally. My goal here is for every military family in America that have lost a child, or that is dealing with a seriously ill child, or is dealing with a chronically ill. We've taken them on vacation, anywhere they want to go, because a lot of times marriages are under assault when a child dies, and in the military it's worse because there's other distractions that they cannot avoid. Their orders. So that would be the coolest thing if we could say that any military family that found themselves in one of those three positions, our program could help them in some way. We just had a boy. He just died last week at 21, and his girlfriend was the most loyal visitor that this hospital at Portsmouth had ever seen. So our little program decided we were going to buy him a gift to give her. So we bought a pair of diamond stud earrings, and it took 4 days for the staff. She had long hair, and they were trying to find out if she had holes in her ears. So we finally won that battle. And the smile on his face when he gave them to her, I'll never forget. And he died 4 or 5 days later. That's cool.
So how can you keep yourself accountable to, like you said, taking this national?
Well, I'm used to building companies from scratch, so I'm not doing anything really any different. I think enthusiasm and confidence are the two most easily identifiable human traits. I'm fortunate enough that I possess those two components, because I rarely get involved in anything. I did 5 deals in 30 years, but when I do, I'm in. And I have been fortunate to have success, and a track record when you're talking to anybody is omnipotent. And my track record was made in the public sector, so it's not like he said, she said. I make up stories, and it's all public. And I'm sure you'll agree with this, that most people, when you meet them, they come with their best foot forward, understandably. But when you start to drill down as to who they are and what they've done versus what you have been told they have done and who they are, very, very rarely when you drill down are you surprised with a positive. Very rarely. And you know, that's, I think the more aggressive a person is, the truth is really, it's become almost a luxury. And that is, you know, that's why this self-confidence, in my opinion, self-confidence, the real enemy is fear. And in this last year and a half, 2 years with the pandemic, we've had enough fear to last a lifetime. Fear of losing our health, our wealth, our job. You know, I mean, no wonder there is, you know, so many people distraught. And that is not a good environment for somebody, you know, who is lacking self-confidence to begin with. But what, you know, all people that have it can do, in my opinion, like I said at the very beginning, is reach out and help people. There's no better way to boost your own morale than that. And if it was good enough for Steve Jobs to regret he didn't do that, it's good enough for me.
So, Jim, we spoke a lot about sort of this issue of self-confidence and, you know, having the tools necessary in order to, you know, foster that. How does this all shake up for you?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question, but if you're doing like this podcast with you, any way that I can get this message out. The reason I did a free audio book is free because I wanted to access people in underserved areas. And I did an audio versus a video because an audio is like you and me talking in a bar. A video reminds me of a motivational speaker talking to an audience. If you have 1,000 people and you have some advice, well, every one of those 1,000 people are going to absorb it in a different way. And that's what I hope that my experience, my outlook makes people think, maybe I'll try this. Work for this person. Maybe it makes some sense. It's free. I mean, and it's not like you have to go to school. It's maybe it's like hiding kind of in plain sight. Because we all, for example, if things are free, we question what their value is. I resent that, because I don't understand is why somebody who's made millions needs to be paid or needs to sell a book to incentivize other people to help them. I mean, to me, if somebody is successful, why not share it? So I don't buy that thing about, if it's free, how good can it be?
Yeah.
I'm not into that.
Yeah, no. So I think this is a great sort of point to transition into the interview. So tell my audience more about James McGonigle and all your successes. Well,
the successes were kind of timing. When I got into the to the stock market, I was young. My dad called me on the first deal. It was Goodway Printing, and he said he saw the future of printing, and he wanted to know if it was a public company. I looked it up. It was. I took the $1,400 that I had of wedding funds, gifts, bought 200 shares. A year later, sold it at $40. Then I had a couple of these, and then I got involved in a company in Utah. It was a penny, and I was in it 6 years. And one day I got a call from the CEO, who was the head of geology at the University of Utah, and he asked me, I'm a young guy at Sun Oil and outside sales, and he asked me if I'd be interested in becoming a director. And anyway, because he had mining people as partners, I said fine. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I figured in 6 years I can't do any worse. And I had a somewhat of a business background. So a year after that, we did a $100 million deal with Martin Marietta. They built a cement plant on our property in Leamington, Utah.
Wow.
Stock went from a penny to $1, and it was a lot of fun. And then, but I'll go back to something in youth, talking about sports. I played basketball, as I mentioned. And one of the things that taught me is that I became hooked on the camaraderie that followed winning. It was the really fun part was the interaction with your teammates. And it really followed me into my career, because I chose a career where I would start companies. I did self-underwritten deals, so I had my own following of people, starting with my mother. So they were the investors. So when I won, they all won. And then it followed me to a maybe not so good place. I became addicted to the dice table. And I know in my heart of hearts that if that dice table only housed one person playing at a time, I would have never gotten interested in it. But I just, the excitement of a hot roll. So I bring this up because there really is a connection of growing up, of your experiences, and how they manifest itself later on. But that's a classic example. My basketball experience led to my career, which led to, or tried to lead to, my downfall, but I survived it.
You mentioned your addiction a little bit was the role. How does self-confidence play into that?
It had nothing to do with it. Although I guess in a way I thought maybe I could outsmart them.
Ah.
Yeah, and I learned. That was an expensive lesson. So, yes.
Yeah. So I see behind you you have a plaque that says "No place, common sense."
No place for common sense. Yeah.
No place for common sense. Give me more context around that.
Well, during the pandemic last year, a friend of mine suggested. He said, "Listen, why don't you take this downtime and do a podcast?" I actually started doing a podcast because I've never had the patience to do a book, and then I got good feedback, and I said, well, let me do a book, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it was the most cathartic thing I have ever done, because it allowed me to remember people places and things that I probably would have never remembered. So it was really, really, like I said, cathartic, and I've got some very positive feedback on it, and it's one of those things that everybody can identify with a chapter. It took me 20 years, but I never forgot it, and I went back to the same person at Merrill Lynch and put down a copy of the Business Week and U.S. News and World Report, which my little company was actually mentioned in because it was the number one performing stock in America in 1985. I mean, again, it's how you handle rejection. I was devastated, and I really wanted to be, but and I think that we all are rejected, part of life. So that's what I mean about if people can see how one person deals with it in a constructive way, maybe that'll give them an idea.
So what were some of your coping mechanisms during the pandemic?
Well, I have always been physically active, and I've been a big fan of the Greek philosophy of mind and body. So I walked and walked. I walked 10 to 15 miles a day. And
awesome.
That's really how I kept myself going. It wasn't, it was trying for everybody, and that's why the book came along at the perfect time, because I know if there was no pandemic, I would have never done that. So I would like to think that something constructive in my own life came from that. And that, to me, that's trying to make the best out of the situation. I think that applies to all of us.
Yeah. So
that's how I did it.
So what would be some life lessons that you could give for someone who, wants to start with an idea or a business? Well,
something that you have a real interest in. If you do that, where it's kind of like a hobby that becomes a business, your chances of being successful are increased in that arena. The other thing I would suggest is that you treat, if it's a business, you treat customers. People want to do business with people they like. This technology era has replaced people with analog things and what have you, and I don't think things have changed very much in that regard. And I go back to being prepared. If you know the customer, and friendship in business, I've always been a big fan of that, because relationships are really the most important asset you acquire in your lifetime, because that gives you the memory. And that's one of the things I learned doing this book, that I knew some cool people and had some fun, more fun than I ever dreamed that I had, because I was having it. You don't know when you're having it until you look back. But I just being prepared. If you're going to go into business, be prepared. I mean, know what you're doing, and make sure that there is a market for what you want, and not something just because you want it that everybody does. But there's really that's a very subjective question, because it's really a lot has to do with a person's own personality. If you can adapt a business, outgoing people, sales are great. People that are more pensive, maybe a career like in research or teaching or something like that. So you try to use as much of your assets going into a venture that you see would be beneficial to that particular venture. But certainly being prepared is a universal statement. It doesn't matter whether you're funny, stupid, or whatever. If you're not prepared, chances are you're gonna fail. And when I say fail, you're going to lose your investment. You may actually learn a lot and may prepare you for a much better opportunity.
Is there a motto or a quote that you live by?
This was attributed to Ethel Kennedy, and I find this to be very cool. Supposedly, she said, "The more one has, the more that is expected." I like that. Yeah. I think that is a very appropriate quote.
Yeah. So those of my listeners who are inspired by you, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, I'm at certainly No Place for Common Sense, Jimmy at No Place for Common Sense. And my email address is jimmymac, JIMMYMAC, 0219 at AOL. And we have one other website, and that is operationkeywest.org. And my background and the two Surgeon General's background were all on there.
Awesome.
And also, the people that we were interacted with that I mentioned to you. This
Wonderful.
has been a great opportunity. Opportunity. I love it.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hi there. I really hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast episode of The Human Resolve. If you feel that others may enjoy this episode as well, please share socially at The Human Resolve. They can also visit my website, thehumanresolve.com, where I offer one-on-one coaching sessions, daily prompts to move you in the right direction, synced directly to your smartphone, and a subscription to my weekly newsletter where I probe into the secrets from living smarter to feeding your 3 brains. If you could also help me out and give me a review and rating on this platform, because I do care what you have to say, I would really appreciate it. Now, get out there, my friends, and get busy living.